Good afternoon, ladies and gents. We're here in the engine shed at Buckfastleigh. Just getting ready for our, getting our viewers to join us before we go live for our second live video today. And over to Alan, who you might remember from last week.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the South Devon Railway for our second live Facebook from South Devon Railway, and we've completed our security checks for today. So I can update you too on our appeal, our SOS appeal. We have now topped 133,000. We're over 133,000, which is great news. So thank you everybody that has contributed to that. Every penny is welcome. It's great, and it's one of the things that's going to keep us going through this crisis. I trust you're all keeping safe and well, maintaining lockdown and so forth. It's frustrating, yes we know. It's as frustrating for us as it is for you. But here we are today. We're going to give you a tour of the loco sheds, and we have one of our footplate staff here who is going to give you a guided tour of one of these locomotives. Last week we asked you to vote for which one you would like, whether it was 1369 or 5542. And the vote just went in favour of 1369. I think it was 52% to 48%. Sounds a bit like Brexit, really, doesn't it? But there we are. So in a moment, I'm going to hand over to one of our long-serving footplate staff, Rodney Cox, who's waiting down here. So Rodney, over to you.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Rod Cox, and I'm fortunate enough to be a driver on the South Devon Railway. I've had a 46-year volunteer career on the South Devon, Dart Valley Railway, starting as an engine cleaner, becoming a fireman, and then eventually becoming a driver. Concurrently with that, I've had a 40-year career on what I consider to be British Railways, others would consider to be First Great Western, but I've just retired from that, and I've got the opportunity this afternoon to show you round our latest overhaul, which is 1369. 1369 is a unique engine. She's the only one in preservation of this small class of locomotive which was designed for a specific purpose. It was designed as a dock shunting engine, but it became famous on two counts. One, because such a tiny little engine could haul the boat trains out of Weymouth and Weymouth docks, and secondly, because it worked on the iconic Bodmin and Wenford Railway after the demise of the BT well tank, so it's got two claims to fame. It is in fact a pannier tank. So why is it called a pannier tank? That's because the water is actually held in these two tanks, one either side of the locomotive, very much like a motorcycle or bicycle panniers, hence pannier tank. There are several classes of pannier tank on the Great Western Railway, British Railways, but this one is a little bit unique in being one of only three classes of pannier tank with outside cylinders. In other words, the pistons that actually drive the wheels are on the outside as opposed to being on the inside of the frames. The two other classes were this one's ancestor, which is the 1361 class, one of which is preserved with our good friends at Didcot on the Great Western Society. And the other one is the very, very modern class 1500, which is a massive, muscular pannier tank for doing freight shunting and empty stock workings. Well, this is 1369, and as you can see, as I say, she's got outside cylinders. She's got what we call a very, very short wheelbase. In other words, the wheelbase, the length between the driving wheels is very, very short, and this enables her to get round tight curves. Myself and my colleagues, and I'd just like to say hello to a few of my colleagues, Charlie Greasley and Ricky Jarrett and Gareth Harrison and all my other friends that are viewing. We're lucky enough to work on this unique engine, both as drivers and firemen. Well, getting back to the layout, as I say, we've got the outside cylinders, we've got a short wheelbase which will allow her to negotiate very, very tight curves, unlike other locomotives, and she is also reasonably light, so she's a very, very dexterous engine. She can do most jobs But she does a job on the South Devon Railway which she wasn't designed for, which she does very well, and that is to run passenger trains. So if we go up, we can have a look round the cab now. We'll climb up into the cab. Well, hello again. You join us on the footplate of 1369, and Jonathan Fry asks, how many locos does the SDR have? I'm going to have to go through this manually. We've got 1369, 5542, 1420, she's under overhaul at the moment. We've got 3803, 4920, 5786, a couple of packets. Have I missed anything out? I don't think so. I think that's about the limit. So we've got about in total we've got about 7 or 8 engines. So we now join the footplate of 1369, and initially you might look around and think it's rather cramped, but because we've got a nice, reasonably level floor area, it's surprising how much room we've got in here. As I say, 1369 was really primarily designed for dock shunting. But she was famous because she was very, very powerful. Powerful enough, in fact, to haul the boat trains. These are express passenger trains that came out of Weymouth. She could haul them from Weymouth docks up to Weymouth station, which is no mean feat indeed. She's a powerful little engine because she's got very, very small wheels, which coupled with the boiler and the boiler pressure, that gives her quite a good tractive effort. She hasn't got that good a range because she only carries just over 800 gallons of water. But fortunately on the South Devon Railway we take water on every trip, that's 7 miles down and back. And if necessary we can take water when we get down to Totnes from the water tower down there. Quick hello to Ben Greening and Jeremy Frost, how are you guys? Hope you're enjoying the broadcast so far. Back to 1369. She's a very, very nice engine to work on. From the point of view of an engine cleaner, which I used to be, she's a little engine, so she's fairly easy to clean. It doesn't take too long. From the point of view of a fireman, there's always that situation in the morning when you light up. Are we going to be on time? We've got the fire lit, we want to bring her around. She is absolutely brilliant for actually generating her steam pressure. You could almost shine a hand lamp in the firebox and she'll make about 10 pounds pressure. That's how good she is. So she's very, very good from a fireman. The one thing that you have to do as a fireman, you have to what we call keep on top of her. In other words, she hasn't got a great deal of power in reserve, but providing you look after the fire and you look after the boiler water level, you will have a good day.
So Rodney, can you just demonstrate how we sort of stoke the fire, or could you explain that?
Yes, indeed. We've got the coal under here. We've got the firebox doors down here. We've got a very, very deep firebox on this locomotive. But the actual grate area is only about 10 square feet, so it's a very, very small grate area, which takes us back to her original use, as I say, as a dock shunter. When she's going along the line, James Green says, is she a smooth rider? Now, that very much dependent on the condition of the track and how you drive her. If you get her to, once you've got 4 coaches on, if you get her to an optimum speed, and you move the cut-off right up so that she's just what we call chittering along, she rides beautifully. A lot of people say, oh, she bounces all over the place, but I've certainly never found that to be the case. I think she's a smashing little engine. Hello to Mike. Hello, Mike Wall. How are you? Right, looking at the firebox. 1 firing shovel, 1 coal flat, and as you can see, we haven't really got it's not too bad for actually firing. You can get it there reasonably well. You've got your back bent, but it's not really hard work, it's more technique and where you put the coal and when you put it. So she is a nice engine to fire. I've never had any problems with her. And certainly from the point of view of a driver, she's a little gem. She'll work 4 coaches to and fro from Buckfastleigh to Totnes and back, but also she's one of the best things that you'll ever get for shunting in the confines of a marshalling yard or carriage sidings or anything like that. In fact, as I very often tell people, you have got such intimate control of the regulator and the reverser on this engine, you could almost ease up on a raw egg. She's that good.
Could you maybe tell us a bit about how you do that then, the regulator and the
Yes,
reverser, what they do?
Right. When we want to put her in direction, full forward gear, into reverse, full back gear, into mid gear, so that when she's standing, she won't go anywhere. And this is the regulator. So when we put her in gear now, when we put her in full forward gear, when we open the regulator, the steam is collected from the boiler. It goes through the valves that we are altering by means of the reverser and into the cylinders. And depending on which direction we've got the reverser set, obviously depends on whether she goes forward or whether she goes backwards. Passenger engines, very often, instead of having a lever, have got like a screw arrangement for altering what we call the cut-off. And I'll explain that in a minute. This is, shall we say, a more rustic system, more beloved of freight and mixed traffic locomotives. But as I say, on this locomotive, when she is pulled right up tight and she's got a good head of steam with about 4 coaches, she is wonderful. Just a quick hello to Tom Freeman from Payton, and Marta Hart from Nuremberg. Hello, how are you? Hope things are going well on that side of the pond and things like that, so good luck to you. Right, moving back to 1369. Right, we put her in forward gear. Now when we get, let's draw an analogy with a bicycle. When we get on a bicycle, when we move away, we need a massive amount of effort to make it move. But once we've got the bicycle on the move, we don't need that sort of effort, so we can go down or up through the gears. We can increase the gears bit by bit so that we get to top speed. And it's the same with the steam engine. When we talk about cut-off, what we are doing, when she's in full forward gear, we are admitting, by means of these valves, we are admitting steam to the cylinders for about 70% of the stroke of the piston. So we're putting a massive amount of steam into that cylinder to really get the engine moving, to get the train moving, and to overcome that initial torque, the friction on the rails. Once we get moving, we don't need that much steam. So what we gradually do is we reduce that percentage by notching her up bit by bit, or as old enginemen used to say, pulling her up. So we pull her up into a comfortable percentage cut-off for this particular type of locomotive. As I say, this engine will pull up beautifully and she'll chitter along like almost just off mid-gear, beautifully up and down all day, no problem whatsoever. Nathan Bentley says, what pressure does she work at? Unfortunately, the pressure gauge is missing, but her working pressure is 165 psi. Hello Ryan and hello Mike, the Orange boys from the South Devon Railway. Look forward to when the emergency's off, we can all get back together again. Right, moving back to 1369, let's put her back into mid gear. As I say, this is what actually alters the cut-off. This is what actually opens the regulator valve, lets the steam go from the boiler down through the valves and to do its useful work on the cylinders and actually drive the locomotive. So that's the reverser, that's the regulator. This amazing piece of equipment is the combination brake, peculiar to Great Western locomotives. The combination brake will apply the steam brake on the locomotive proportionally with the vacuum brake on the train. When there is no train, in other words, when it's running like locomotive, it will equally apply the steam brake on the locomotive to an effective degree. So, as I say, this is the combination brake. Some railways you see that they've got separate controls for the vacuum brake and separate controls for the locomotive brake, but good old Great Western, we've got the combination brake. Hello Tracy Jolly. Hopefully when the emergency's over you can come and see us, and all of you out there, please do, when we are able to reopen again, please do come and say hello at the front, because very often you go charging back to the coaches. We're always pleased to say hello to you up on the footplate. Right, this locomotive, like most Great Western locomotives, to Ansell Carroll in Exeter, was built at Swindon Works. Swindon Works was for many, many years the principal works of the Great Western Railway. Prior to that they had Wolverhampton as well, but later on Swindon was the works where Great Western locos were built. Swindon built everything from the smallest nut and bolt right up to the King class, and on into the diesel era, they built a lot of the diesel hydraulic locomotives as well, and the diesel rail cars that used to work on the branch lines. And it has to be said that the products of Swindon were always extremely well built, and that introduces another interesting aspect with this locomotive. With slight variations in scale, you will see on all the bigger locomotives that the controls are very, very similar. The Great Western Railway, under George Jackson Churchwood, their chief mechanical engineer, were great ones for standardisation. And in fact, many of the fittings throughout this cab would fit on our other pannier tanks and smaller engines. It's mostly interchangeable, with some variations. Hello Toby, South Devon Railway driver and Southern Supremo. Hope you're well on the old southern region there, and look forward to you joining us soon as well. Moving back to 1369, so we've got reverser, regulator, brake, a proportional brake, as I say, applies the brake on the train and the locomotive. Over in this corner, we've got a peculiar piece of brass equipment that would look nice on the mantelpiece. And this is what's known as a hydrostatic displacement lubricator. And basically what it is, we've got a chamber here that fills full of water. The water is condensed water through that condensing coil on the cab roof that goes down into the bottom of the lubricator. And as the name would suggest, it gradually displaces a large quantity of oil, which is fed with steam pressure. It's atomized, so it becomes like a foamy lubricant for the valves and cylinders. Under pressure, it goes right to the valves and cylinders, and it really is an amazing piece of equipment. Later on, a lot of railways favoured mechanical lubricators, which is where you've got to drive from the valve gear or the motion downstairs. You've got like a little pump or a series of little pumps that are derived from the motion that actually pump the oil in pulses to all the components. But this hydrostatic lubricator, it's atomized, and it's actually fed in like a sort of foamy, oily mass down to the particular piece of equipment that it's going to lubricate. So a bit of an ingenious piece of equipment, really. This is the steam brake lubricator. This is to actually lubricate the steam brake. And these two most important pieces of equipment, these are known as the clack valves. Hello, James Ascoff from the Midhants. How are you on the Midhants? Hope when things are over that you get back on track as well. And hello Lee from the SDR, how are you? Right, these are the clack valves. Now these valves are one-way valves, and these will overcome the 165 psi boiler pressure to put water actually into the boiler. How does this happen? Right, down on the frames we've got a piece of equipment called a live steam injector. And basically what it is, it's a chamber that's flooded full of water. It's got a series of cones throughout, and basically what we do is we let a jet of live steam hit that water, and through a change from that pressure energy to velocity energy, it overcomes a little gap. It's got a receiving cone like that, and that change in energy, when you change energy, it maintains the same force. It changes from velocity energy back to pressure energy to a sufficient degree that it will overcome that 165 psi boiler pressure and put water in the boiler. It was invented by a Monsieur Giffard in 1851, because prior to that they had all sorts of weird and wonderful pumps to try and get the water into the boiler. There are even tales of when a locomotive was on shed, that they would lubricate the track up against a buffer stop and just let the engine tick over to maintain the boiler water level. But once the onset of the live steam injector came about, obviously all that was consigned to history, and we've got the clack valves in the cab and the injectors just out of sight, just down on the underframe. Those two amazing pieces of equipment. Sometimes on a Great Western locomotive, on the top of the boiler, you'll see like a square box with pipes coming out on either side. That's because these two, the clack valves, are mounted on top of the boiler. And the reason that's done is because we're putting cold water into a hot boiler. And by having the clack valves on the top and a series of trays throughout the boiler, it allows the feed water to dissipate equally throughout the hot boiler without making too many cold spots. So this being a slightly older design, it's got the clack valves in the cab. But as I say, most Great Western locos the clap valves are actually on the top, what we call top feed. Right, moving swiftly on, the injectors have to have two controls. They have to have a water valve, so that's the fireman one down there, and they have a water valve for the driver side one, which is down there, and they have to have two steam valves. There are the two steam valves, so that's the left hand and right hand steam valves for the injectors. We've got two other controls here. This is a most important control. This is the blower. Right, whilst I'm going along, and I've got the engine in forward gear like that, I've got the regulator open a little bit. The steam that is being taken from the boiler is going down and it's driving the pistons, which are consequently driving the wheels. It is then exhausted up the chimney at the front of the locomotive in what we call the smoke box. And when it comes into the smoke box, it comes through a baffle like that called the blast pipe, which baffles it, and that's received by almost like an inside chimney. So you can see the shape of the chimney like that. There's almost like an inside chimney, which is called a petticoat pipe, and that blast lines up with a petticoat pipe, and it creates an immense vacuum at the front of the locomotive, which, where we've got the boiler tubes that go throughout the boiler that carry the hot gases made by the fire, it actually draws them through. So we get this circuit like that. We've got air coming up from these little babies here. Those are the flaps underneath the actual grate. These are called the dampers, left hand and right hand. So that lets what we call primary air up through the grate, very much like the fire at home. And secondary air can come through the fire hole door, so that we've got all those gases coming off the fire, combining with the air from coming up through the grate and the air in through the fire hole door to actually generate perfect combustion. So we're going along, that's all working nicely, it's going in like a circuit. Now all of a sudden we want to stop. So if I shut the regulator like that, where are all those gases going to go? They're going to come flying out through here, and the locomotive is going to do what we call poking its tongue at you. In other words, you're going to get a sheet of flame come out of the cab. So the driver, when he's going along like this, when he knows he's got to shut the regulator because we've got to slow down or we're coming to a station, he'll just crack the blower on a little bit like that. And what that does, that puts a false draft on the fire. So it replaces the draft of combustion with a false steam-induced draft up the chimney, and it keeps that, it maintains that vacuum, and it maintains the hot gases coming through so that we all don't get a shave or worse when we shut the regulator. So that's the blower. Its corresponding one on the other side, this is for your benefit, ladies and gentlemen, this is the steam heat valve, and this one actually admits steam into the train line to engage with the radiators throughout the coaches and warm the coaches. Depending on how many coaches that we've got, we actually turn it on there, and then we can either increase it or decrease it with what's known as the Mason valve. That's the Mason valve there. And that brings me, the best to last, this is the most important piece of equipment on the locomotive. This is the water gauge, and this one is actually partially dismantled at the moment because the locomotive is wintered. In other words, the boiler is drained down, the injectors and all the pipe work is drained down. But just to demonstrate, under normal circumstances it would be up like that and the drain would be closed, and in there we would see the level of water actually in the boiler. That is our holy grail. As a fireman, if you run out of steam, it's a bit of a laugh. Everyone will take the mickey out of you. Did you hear what happened to Rod Cox the other day? He had one coach on and he ran out of steam, and it will be laughed off in about 2 weeks. If you run out of water, you are in very, very deep trouble indeed, because you are going to cause great damage to the top of the firebox. We have safety devices called fusible plugs in there, which will let jets of steam down into the firebox if we run out of water. But that is the cardinal sin of a fireman, is to run out of water. So our main concern as a fireman is to maintain that water level. That is our holy grail, is the water level in that gauge. Secondary is the steam. Obviously we need steam to put water in the boiler, but most importantly we need that water level. And that's what we call the gauge glass. Now, some of the enthusiastic members of our viewers will say, well, Great Western engines have only got one gauge glass, so how can that be? Well, the reason being, we've got one gauge glass and we've got two test cocks. So if for any reason, if that glass breaks, and it does happen occasionally, the first thing we would do is put water in the boiler, And we'd also, by means of our hose, which is normally joined to there, we'd fill that bucket up with water, because now we've got to dismantle all this, and this is all hot, and we're going along. So as we dismantle it, each component part can be put into the bucket, which A will contain it and B cool it. But to test the level of water in the boiler, we have got these little babies, and that's our test cocks. We open them, and if we get steam out of that one, or get water out of that one, we know, if I draw a line across, that is more or less the boiler water level. So that's what we call the test cocks. That's the gauge glass, that's the test cocks.
So most importantly, Rodney, how does the whistle work?
How does the whistle work? Right. We've got two whistles on here. We've got what's known as the service whistle. That's the shriller whistle. That's this one here. Obviously it won't work at the moment because we've got no steam. That's the one we use to warn people on or about the line. We use it all the time. As soon as we move the locomotive, we give them just a little pop whistle. That tells anyone in the vicinity that the locomotive is going to be moved. Any sort of warning, we use that whistle. The second whistle, which is deeper, is known as the brake whistle. And that's got a specific purpose. On freight trains of yesterday, when very, very often most of the wagons didn't have their own brakes, the only means of stopping the train was the guard's van at the rear and the locomotive brake on the front, or even on a tender engine, the handbrake. So there were no brakes on any of the wagons except handbrakes. So it had to be a cooperation between the driver and the guard for stopping the train. And any requirement from the driver would be communicated to the guard. In other words, he wanted the brake screwed down by means of the brake whistle. Coming over here, this is the fireman's side. We had the test cocks there for the level of water in the boiler. Over here, we've got the test cocks. We've got 1, 2, 3. As I say, it's drained at the moment. These are to show us how much water we've got in the tanks. So that's basically that. There's our firing shovel. There's our bucket. Always have a bucket. We get other occasions where you get a line side fire or something like that. We can very often use the bucket to douse things before they get a little bit out of hand and we land up in the newspaper or something like that. So that's basically the footplate layout. If anyone's got any questions, please do fire away. We're lucky enough to have a look around this iconic engine today, and I do so hope that once the emergency is lifted that you will all come and see us and hopefully travel behind this locomotive. If there's, as I say, any questions, please do contact us. This is one of our unique locomotives. You might like to come and see our other absolutely unique locomotive, which is our 060 Collet Goods, which is it's currently awaiting overhaul, but we're extremely lucky on the South Devon Railway to have these two unique locomotives. At the moment, as you know, we're all in lockdown. We've been involved today in doing security checks, just walking around, checking things, making sure everything's all right. But today we decided that we would do this little walk around the 13. But at the moment, sadly, we are closed, and at the moment we can't, unfortunately, welcome any volunteers or staff or visitors because of the nature of the emergency. But once the emergency is lifted, we do so hope that you will come and join us. So, as I say, if there's any questions you'd like to ask, please do. I noticed that Kevin Lovell, is taking notes for his assessment. I'll bear that in mind when you work with me, Kevin.
And so we've got one question.
This is a good question, yes. Hello to David Higgs in London. How are you? Really sorry what's going on, but I hope, David, again, that when things are lifted, that you'll come down and say hello to us, and always put your head up on the footplate and say hello to us, because you might even get a cup of tea out the old tea can. My lapel badge, right? My lapel badge is my trades union. As I said earlier, I'm a lifelong railwayman on British Railway / First Great Western, and I've always been in ASLEF, the train drivers union. And even though I'm now retired from the mainline railway, I still am a member of the union. I'm a retired member of the union. I'm very proud to be. And that's my ASLEF badge, and that's my ASLEF tie. Oh, hello, Robbie Johns from the Plym Valley Railway. Nice to see you. As I say, I do hope that all of us, all our on preserved railways, will be able to get back to where we were once the emergency is lifted. Hello, Terry Bartlett from Stewart's Lane. How can a person become a driver? Well, keep this to yourself. Slip us a few books. No, seriously, I started when I was 13 years old. I should have been 14, but I told them I was 14. I started as a locomotive cleaner. And as a locomotive cleaner, you report to the shed and you speak to the running shed foreman, and the running shed foreman will explain to you, although it sounds a little bit odd, how to clean a locomotive. Because there are specific techniques of cleaning a locomotive and a specific way of doing it so you don't cross yourself, so as you don't walk on what you've already cleaned. There are various materials to consider, but most importantly is the safety aspect of working on a locomotive depot. So once you've gone through that, once you've been inducted into the safety culture and it's been explained to you how you clean a locomotive, away you go under supervision, and as you're cleaning away, you're thinking to yourself, well, what's that? And what's that? And what's that? And what's that? And what you are charged to do as an engine cleaner is to ask questions of a driver and fireman as to how it all works, so that you gradually get a broad picture of what's what and where it is on the locomotive. It's a bit like doing a jigsaw, really. You can underpin that from time to time when we have what we call mutual improvement classes. And that's where some of our senior engineers and senior drivers and signallers and all trades will come along, and they will address a group on their particular subject. In other words, we have our very able mechanical foreman sometimes explain about how the gauge glass works, how to change a gauge glass en route, how to insert a new gauge glass. So you can underpin that knowledge by going to mutual improvement class. And then after you've been a cleaner for a while, you'll be invited to become the third man. In other words, a trainee fireman. Providing you pass an assessment, you can become a trainee fireman. And then once you've been a trainee fireman for a while, the crews will get to know how you're getting on. You'll undergo periodical assessments as a trainee fireman until the great day when you go in front of the inspector, who also happens to be me, and you pass out as a fireman. And that's the day when you do your examination. I ride up and down on the branch with a trainee fireman, and he or she then becomes a pass cleaner. And subject to completion of a requisite number of turns, usually about 12 months later, you're actually appointed as a fireman. And then you start all over again, because you undergo your firing career on various engines, various trains, because we have dining trains, we have obviously the passenger train going up and down, we have freight from time to time. We try to encourage people to come in the weekday and get involved in shunting, because that is the bread and butter of any loco man. That is the most dangerous manoeuvres of the lot, is actually being involved in shunting. And if we can take young people and train them to safely shunt, learning hand signals, flag signals, lamp signals, you have to learn all that. Once you've done all that, and you've been a fireman for a while, you'll undergo periodical assessments again. Then you become what, as far as I'm concerned, is the best job on the railway. You become an auto fireman on a push-pull train. And we're a railway that, with our other lovely engine in front of us, 5542 and also 6412, we can run auto trains, push-pull trains, such as they used to run on the X-Valley and all the other branches in the area. And we're very lucky because we can do it authentically with what's known as grandfather rights. We can have the fireman on his own on the engine and the driver on his own at the front of the auto. So once you become an auto fireman, the next stage, again subject to quite rigorous assessment, once you start doing your driver training, eventually you pass out and you become a pass fireman. A fireman passed to act as driver. And then again, subject to a probationary period of doing a certain number of turns completed safely, you'll be reassessed again, and eventually you will become a driver. And then once you become a driver, you will spend all your time trying to talk the fireman into doing the driving so that you can get back over here and do the firing, because that's the best bit.
So I just noticed a question a moment ago from someone from a name you might recognise. We had one from Magda as well. And she wants to know how many fusible plugs there are on 1369.
There's only one on 1369, and you'll bash your head when you get in there and look for it, because I know, because I've done this on many occasions. And to Gareth Harrison, that is the hardest question ever. what is your favourite loco you've worked on? And Gareth, I honestly don't know, because the way I look at it, I'm extremely lucky in 2020 to be able to work on steam locomotives. So as far as I'm concerned, if it's a coal-fired steam locomotive, I like it. But if you push me, what is my favourite locomotive? It's got to be 1420. Hello, Dan Robinson, and 4-year-old son, looking forward to visiting. Yeah, please do come and see us. As I say, once the emergency is lifted, come on down, as they say. Obviously, we've got to wait for announcements. We don't know when this is going to take place, but we do so look forward to welcome you all when it's all over. Hello, Craig from South Wales, Craig Simmons, and hello, Mike Maddox from Cross Country. Hello, Michael, a colleague of mine from Exeter St David's from many years ago, and a contemporary of mine on cross-country trains down at Plymouth. So hello to you.
And one final thing, Rodney, before we go, what's that on the above the fire hole door then on that tray?
Oh my God! This is the most important piece of equipment on British Railways. This is the tea can, held with due reverence, and there is a correct technique for making a proper cup of tea. And the tea is made, and it's put on the dish there, and then it's available for the driver and fireman to help themselves to. Well, ladies and gents, I hope that's been reasonably informative. I do go on a little bit, I appreciate that. But thank you so much for joining us today on the South Devon Railway. As I say, we're really sorry that at the moment we can't welcome volunteers or visitors, but we just hope that once the emergency has lifted and we enter more cheerful times, you can all come and join us. So thank you very much indeed. Oh, and also, if you go on our website, could you make a little donation towards the South Devon Railway, because we want to be here for you once this emergency lifts. I've just put 5 bob in, so if you can spare a little bit more than that, that would be champion. Thank you very much.